What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different and talking about all the regional differences of Mario Kart Double Dash. The game has 3 different versions, so let's see the differences in all of them. Now the first difference is before you even boot up the game. The Gamecube banners are different between each region. For Europe and Australia, there is a space between Mario and Kart for the long title, but for the USA version, it's one word Mario Kart. And the short title in Europe and Australia have spaces in between them and have 2 exclamation points like on the title, but in the United States, Mario Kart Double Dash is all one word. The Europe and Australian banner is a more accurate translation from the Japanese release. So now let's boot up the game. When you boot up the game in Europe, a screen pops up that asks you if you want to switch between 50Hz and 60Hz before starting the game. Alongside this is a 7-second countdown before the game automatically picks 50Hz. But since TVs in North America and Japan are 60Hz by default, instead the screen will ask if you want to enable progressive scanning with a 9-second countdown if component cables are connected. And now let's look at one of the most glaring differences. In Europe, Australia, and the United States, this is what the logo looks like. It's pretty iconic. But the Japanese version is pretty different. It has obviously the Japanese text under it, which translates to Mario Kart Double Dash. Not only is the Mario Kart portion a bit more saturated, but the Double Dash portion uses the same font, though with a different thickness, and instead of the 2 stripes like in the North America and European release, it has 3. And there's no longer 2 trademark symbols, there's only a registered symbol. This also carries over to the title screen, the only difference being that the Japanese text is now white, which I assume was made so it'd be easier to read. And now let's head to the character select screen, where there's one pretty big difference with Birdo. When choosing a character and kart in the game, every character normally has 2 voice clips, one when they're highlighted and another when you confirm their selection. In the Japanese version, Birdo is actually pretty unique because her selection voice has her say her Japanese name, which is Catherine. But since her confirmation voice clip already has her saying Birdo, the international version simply reused that clip for both. Because of this, Birdo became the only character in the international release whose selection and confirmation voice clips are exactly the same. Now hopping into a race, one of the most obvious changes is the speedometer. When you play in English in Europe and Australia, and just in the United States version, it'll display miles per hour, because in North America that's what's commonly used, and I guess it's used in English in Europe too. But for every other version, whenever you play in a different language in Europe, Australia, or you have the Japanese version, it displays kilometer per hour. This is honestly just a no-brainer. And after you finish the race, on the race results screen, the North American release uses more generic arrows when showing your placement. In the Europe and Japanese release, the arrows are much more stylized, which I think is a pretty nice change. It gives it a bit more character. When you beat the game and get to the ending, there's actually a difference in the ending music. To prevent the track from finishing too early when playing in 50Hz, there's a different version of the ending theme that was made to play during 50Hz that is only in the European release. There are a few differences. Since the track is in 50Hz, it plays around 2% faster. One of the parts play twice, and one of the portions in the 60Hz version doesn't exist in the 50Hz version. We can hear the difference here. And one of the more obscure differences is with saving. When the game has an error saving, it displays different messages depending on the region. In Europe and Australia, it says an error may have occurred during saving. But if you look closely, they spelled occurred wrong. This was fixed in the North American release, where it spells occurred correctly. I'm pretty sure not many knew about this, because getting a saving error is pretty rare if you don't make it happen intentionally. Now let's get into the more internal changes. There is one change that I couldn't find. Apparently, the item slot lists are different between the 3 versions, but I really can't find any information about it. If anyone knows the differences or knows where to find this information, please let me know in the comments. Moving on, there's an unused generic bronze cup in the game's files, but between the Europe and North American release, the colors are pretty different. They also removed the reverse cup leftovers in the European release. The reverse cup had scrapped cup models and logo in the North American and Japanese releases, but they were removed when it released in Europe. And finally, one of the most obvious differences is the box art. Not just the logo, the boxes in general. The Japanese release looks way different than the North American and European releases. However, that doesn't mean the European and North American versions don't have differences. The European release is much more zoomed out, and we can more clearly see Yoshi and Birdo in the background. For the North American release, everything is more condensed together. And obviously in Europe, the text changes at the bottom depending on what language it's in. So yeah, that's pretty much every regional change in Mario Kart Double Dash. This video was really fun to make. It'd be fun to continue this throughout most of the Mario games in the series. It's really cool to see how these games change in between their international releases. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Comment what regional change caught you by the most surprise, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.